I bought every piece from Justin Bieber's new brand SKYLRK to find out what's worth it and what's not. Or maybe none of it's worth it. Let's find out. Now, I'm also going to be going over some of the upcoming stuff because that is super interesting. So it's pretty clear now that SKYLRK is a pretty big deal for Justin Bieber. And we know that he can create a pretty successful brand as he did with his last one, Drew House. We also know that he stopped working with his partner on that brand and kind of left. He even said that people shouldn't waste their money on it anymore. So not a very amicable departure. Either way, with SKYLRK, it seems a lot more complete. There's a lot more products and a pretty insane catalog of stuff that he's leaked that he's already working on. So I got the footwear, the accessories, the clothing, but I think we should start with the clothing. Let's start with the hoodie. So this is the yellowish, greenish hoodie that they released at launch. They call this one Fizz. Now, since this original drop, which I believe was in July or maybe August, they have done some other colors. I think they did maybe a lilac one, maybe a sail color as well, or I think it was red and sail. But all of those have the exact same construction, so generally speaking, it doesn't really matter what the color is. If you're going for a traditional hoodie, this is what it's going to be like. So generally speaking, this is a very minimal hoodie. Like, you have zero branding anywhere except for a tiny little SKYLRK logo just embroidered into the sleeve. Now, the price on this, which I will caveat with saying that a lot of people seem to be pretty upset with the prices of the entire brand. However, having said that, I do think it was exacerbated by a lot of different blogs like Daily Mail and stuff like that were saying that it's super overpriced. This hoodie retails at $140, which I actually think is pretty reasonable. And when we get into the details of this hoodie, well, you can decide for yourself. But there is so many different celebrity brands that immediately go for the luxury segment and price their stuff super high and not for the average person. Yeezy brand obviously being the exception, especially with the Gap stuff. But this, as an independent brand with no crazy established manufacturing line, I think is pretty good at its launch pricing. So in terms of what you're getting, this is 100% cotton, made in the USA. And normally made in the USA stuff definitely carries a higher price tag, although now with tariffs and everything, maybe it's even cheaper to manufacture stuff in the US. Now, they don't disclose the actual GSM and weight. However, I would say this is probably about 450 to 500 GSM. It's definitely a nice weight. You know, it's not too heavy and super thick, and it's also not too light, so it still feels super premium. Feels nice and soft. It's definitely gone through a wash, so all of the hoodies have some kind of wash effect on them to kind of feel a little bit more worn in, something like a vintage wash. But yeah, overall quality of materials and everything, I'm pretty happy. I think it's pretty decent. I think the main complaint that you could possibly have is that it's too plain and simple, and obviously I assume they're going to do different stuff in the future, or maybe not. Maybe just keep it as a blank. Now, for sizing, I went ahead and got my true to size, which is a medium. I'm 5'8", and I think it fits pretty perfect. It's an oversized fit that's boxy and also slightly cropped, which I really like. And I definitely think if you really don't like the crop design, you can easily size up and get away with that. Either way, SKYLRK basic hoodie. I think I've got to give it an 8.8 out of 10. But now for the more controversial pieces, the zip hoodie. So I got two different colors. One they call just regular blue, and then the other one they call smudge, which is basically just washed gray. So for materials on this, it is exactly the same as the other one. So again, made in the USA, 100% cotton, roughly 500 GSM. Overall quality, really nice. However, I will say that the zips are a little bit thin, maybe a little bit thinner than I would have expected. They're YKK, so it's not like it's terrible quality or anything, but maybe if I had one complaint, they would be thicker zips. Now, price for this is $160, just a slight $20 price bump, and that's because not only are you getting a zip, but you're also getting shoulder pads. Yes, this is by far the most controversial detail, is the addition of removable shoulder pads. Now, I'm pretty sure this is the most accessible shoulder padded hoodie on the market. A lot of designer brands have done the whole shoulder padded hoodie thing before. Brands like, I don't know, Greg Ross is a designer that has implemented this throughout his lineup. Balenciaga has done it. Yeezy also did it as well with one of their t-shirts. And it's not like a completely rogue design element. Like, a ton of celebrities have been wearing, you know, hoodies and t-shirts with shoulder pads in. Travis Scott, Drake, and a ton more. But if you're trying to get this look of, you know, shoulder pads in a hoodie, this is definitely the cheapest I've ever seen it. Now, of course, like I said, they are removable. So the way that you do that is you just have like this little piece of fabric on the inside, which kind of acts like a little hammock. So you basically just pull it out like that, and then it just turns into a regular zip hoodie. And this is what the padding looks like. Pretty big and thick. But I will say, if you do not like the idea of shoulder pads, I probably would just skip these hoodies entirely and just get the regular basic one, because that's pretty much the main unique element of this hoodie. Like, other than that, you are getting pretty much a blank design. Like, again, the only branding is on the sleeve. So I would definitely suggest, you know, if you were on the fence, maybe try it out. You just might like it. I've definitely grown to really like the way that it looks. Now, again, just like the other one, these were the two zip hoodies that were available at launch, the blue and the gray, but there has been a bunch of other ones. I think like a mossy green one, and then also maybe a lilac color. But generally speaking, in terms of hoodies, all zip hoodies will have padding and all basic regular hoodies will not. They'll just be unpadded. Now, for sizing, I got a medium, again, my true to size, and again, I think it fits perfect. I think it's a very, very similar fit as the regular one. So, you know, boxy, oversized, slightly cropped. And that cropping effect definitely is a little bit more exaggerated when you have the padding in, because it kind of sits off your shoulders slightly. But yeah, overall, really do like these zip hoodies. I'm gonna have to give them a 9 out of 10. Right, moving on to footwear, we have the Chunky Mule. Now, I have a bunch of different colors, the blue one, the pink one, and the gray one on top. So this is actually canceled. This is a canceled design. They no longer make it. Justin Bieber went on Instagram and basically said that they are discontinuing the Chunky Mule because he rolled his ankle. So instead of scrapping the idea completely, he just made an identical lower profile version, which makes a lot of sense. And that is something that they actually released in their latest drop. The exact same mule design, just slightly lower profile. Overall, I think this is a good decision. I think these things were a little bit too thick and chunky. I do like the idea and the general concept behind it, and honestly, these are really comfortable. However, the chunkiness just makes them pretty heavy, so I can imagine with the slightly lower profile, we'll remove some of the weight and make these just even more comfortable. As far as the material goes on here, it's very, very nice. In fact, everything from the unboxing experience to the packaging and just the overall feel of materials, it's super premium. Price for these is $180, which honestly I think is reasonable. I do think it's expensive for a mule, but reasonable for the quality and premiumness that you get with these. As far as the construction and material goes, the top part comes in a very plush and soft padded material. The overall outer layer is kind of like a fabric towel, like, for lack of better words, like it feels like a towel. The footbed is even softer. It feels great. You've got the little SKYLRK logo right there on the heel. The outsole has decent traction and also has a slight rocker effect, so it does feel pretty good walking around. And this midsole does have squish to it, so it's not just solid material, it's pretty soft, and you do feel that underfoot. As far as sizing goes, I went with my true to size. They fit perfect, so I definitely recommend, if you are interested in this one, well, now the lower profile one, stay with your true to size. Overall, I really like the design of these. I do think that the lower profile one is going to be a lot more practical. These I would definitely not wear for an extended period of time. If I'm going to be walking a lot as like a loungewear pair of shoes, great. But if I know I'm going to be doing a lot of walking, this would not be my first choice just because of how heavy they are. Overall, Chunky Mules, 7 out of 10. The lower profile ones will probably score higher. So yeah, I'm glad they made that pivot. Next, we have the beach slides. So I actually got two different colors, a blue and a green, because I did want to test out one of the, I guess, details that they marketed pretty heavily. And that is the fact that these come in a two-piece construction, so you can very easily just slip out the insole. And I think they're supposed to be swapped, or at least mix and matched, or that's kind of how they were promoting it. So you can just, I guess if you're someone who, you know, has multiple different colorways or wanted to buy multiple different colorways, you can mix and match it and give it a slightly more interesting look. I don't know who's going to be buying multiple colorways. Maybe if they sold these insoles separately, it could be something that's a little bit more popular, but yeah, interesting. Either way, price on these things is $80, $20, which I actually think is also pretty reasonable. It's actually just kind of like a industry standard for premium EVA slides like this. They come in frosted clear bags, also with a hanger, which I thought was very interesting. That's something that kind of like Crocs does a lot of the time, and I always assumed that was for retailers to hang them up on shelf space. So maybe we'll see SKYLRK stores or SKYLRK shoes at retailers at some point. Either way, the slides themselves are very, very comfortable. The insole is incredibly soft and squishy, and you really do feel that underfoot. However, and this could just be my personal preference, but I do really like a pair of slides that stick to your feet. The Yeezy Slide did this very, very well because of how grippy the material was and how lightweight they were. You almost felt like you could run in them. They felt very secure and they stuck to your feet. These don't really have that. They feel a little bit more loose, and I guess that's down to the more traditional shape that these come with. They're a lot more like your basic slides where it's just a footbed with a strap going over the top. Now, couple that looseness with the fact that this material is also a little bit slippery, you don't get the best, secure feeling underfoot. However, I will say overall, they're very soft. Even the outer layer is nice and soft. So overall, they're comfortable, but if you like a pair of slides that really sticks to your feet, this is probably not one of them. Great for lounging around, but for extended wear, especially with socks, you may find them a little bit slippy. Now, in terms of sizing, they fit perfectly at true to size. That's what I did, and that's what I'm going to recommend to you. So overall, beach slides, I'll give them an 8 out of 10. All right, let's talk about accessories. This is actually like one of the most promoted pieces from the entire SKYLRK brand. Like, you see them promoting these a lot. And it's also their most expensive item that they sell. And they call these the $200 upside down sunglasses. So I'm assuming the upside down thing is because of like the funky shape where they almost look like they're upside down. Now, originally, I must admit, I did think these were just gonna look ridiculous, but after I've worn them for a little bit, I've kind of warmed up to the look. I don't know, you tell me, do I look ridiculous right now? Because I think they actually look pretty cool. Now, I do think that they take some getting used to because it is quite a different shape from your standard sunglasses. I mean, I'm not entirely sure if I can even pull them off. I might just look absolutely ridiculous. The packaging is real nice. You get a custom box with a little puffer carry piece, so you can slip them in there, kind of protects it a little bit. The glasses themselves are pretty basic in terms of construction. It's just regular, plastic sunglass material with the SKYLRK logo on the side and a little SKYLRK text on the inside. They overall feel great quality to me. However, I did have one issue, and that is just the fact that they're pretty narrow. So when I put them on, they're very, very tight, and honestly, they're uncomfortable for extended period of wear because they really press into the side of my head, and over time it almost gives you a little bit of a headache. Now, I have had some sunglasses before where they allow like a little bit of wiggle on the outside, so you could extend and open them up a little bit more just to allow some of that, extra space. I might just have a big head, but these do not. There's no flex outwardly, if that makes any sense. So they do end up just being very, very tight on your head. But yeah, upside down sunglasses, 6.5 out of 10. So even though that is pretty much everything that SKYLRK has released so far, what can we expect next? Well, aside from a ton of new colors in everything that we've seen, I mean, he's showcased a bunch of different hoodie colors and footwear colors and even sunglass colors. We're also going to be getting actual sneaker models, which is pretty exciting, at least from the original looks. There's one that he's been teasing, which is like a skate style design. It's a little bit more chunky, has more premium materials like suede and leather. He's also shown off a retro runner, low profile design, and some 3D printed footwear with Zellerfeld, the same people that made the Nike Air Max 1000. I think he's shown off some kind of slipper version and also a football boot, which is pretty crazy, but I think could become a trend. They've also teased a potential women's range that they may do. We saw his wife wearing a leather jacket, which they specified was a SKYLRK piece. Phone cases with a joint holder is also something that's on the radar in the near future. So yeah, a ton of stuff upcoming. I really do think that this is just the beginning of this brand. But let me know, what do you guys think of Justin Bieber SKYLRK? Would you wear any of this stuff? Let me know in the comments. And of course, like always, I'm gonna leave a video in the top left-hand corner, so just click over there to check it out.